Hey everyone, welcome back to the Supply Change Podcast brought to you by Apptricity. I'm your host, Christian Garcia. Thank you guys for joining us for today's episode where we're going to be talking about the connected service vehicle. And we're going to be answering really four main questions about a connected service vehicle. First question is, what is it? Second question is, who would use it? Third question is, how does it work? And the fourth question, and perhaps the most important question, how does it help my business? Right, so the connected service vehicle is a vehicle that could be part of your fleet, right? So really what we're talking about here is any company that owns a vehicle that contains, important assets, tools, inventory, any sort of stock. That's really who we're referring to when we talk about a connected service vehicle and who it could be used for. And so let's start by answering question number one. What is it? What is a connected service vehicle? So like I'd mentioned, this is something that typically you would see in anybody who's managing a fleet. For example, if you do things like house calls, right? If you get calls and you have work orders that you have to go and complete, for example, internet installations or, pest control, maid services, things of that nature where you have a company-owned vehicle, you have employees who are going to a location to complete a task. In this case, we would refer to that as a work order. That's really who this connected service vehicle is for. And so a connected service vehicle is made up of three main components, one of which is the software. So essentially a connected service vehicle will have a cloud-hosted software platform on both the web and mobile. So I guess technically we can consider that to be two separate components. But really from the mobile side of things, this is an application that a driver would use to see work orders, to see what's on board their vehicle, and to look at basically the work that they have to do for the day. From the web, the software is essentially establishing all of those components so that you can see them on mobile. For example, if I know that a vehicle has to be equipped with a certain profile, we at Apptricity call that a loadout profile. So I know that for the day, I'm going to need this list of these specific tools and items in order to complete the work that's been assigned to me. We call this a loadout profile. So from the web, you would establish these loadout profiles and you would assign them to a particular vehicle or driver, right? So that way, when that driver logs into the mobile application, they'll be seeing, okay, what do I need to have on my vehicle to complete my work? They may be wondering, well, how do we keep track of what's on the vehicle? And this is the second component, and this is RFID or Bluetooth tags and antennas. So again, at Apptricity, we have what we call our iController, which is an edge device that has associated antennas, whether they're RFID or Bluetooth, but those antennas are constantly scanning and looking for tags in their vicinity. So if I put this edge device inside of a vehicle and I connect antennas and then I connect that controller to the web, most typically in a vehicle setting, it's through a cellular connection, right? So I would just put a SIM chip inside of the controller and then it would connect to the network the same way that your cell phone does or your smart device. Once I connect that controller to the web and I'm scanning tags in the vehicle, I can now compare my scans to what is supposed to be on the vehicle. So as you're going about your work day and you're using your tools, maybe there are some things on your vehicle that you would consider to be consumable inventory, things that you would expect to not come back to your vehicle. You can mark those things as consumable inventory. And so when the controller does a scan and it says, hey, I know that my vehicle is supposed to have 10 of these widgets, but I know that I used 5 throughout the day, you'll get real-time visibility on what is in your vehicle. And certain things you may not want to leave your vehicle. If you have an expensive tool or a piece of equipment that's supposed to come back to your vehicle, and you fire up the vehicle and it runs its scan, you want to know, hey, these are things that need to come back. So there's that separation between things that we would refer to as tools and equipment and consumable inventory. And how does the system interact with each of those? Those are configurable settings from the web that you can see then on the mobile. We're outfitting vehicles with a controller that has RFID or Bluetooth antennas, and then we are tagging the equipment inside the vehicle with RFID tags or Bluetooth tags. Either of these technologies work just fine. We've typically seen more RFID in this example simply because it's a lot cheaper. You can read everything in the enclosed vehicle without too much difficulty, right? Bluetooth tends to be a technology that guarantees a little bit more read range because it's an active beacon, and so it can read from further away. But with RFID, and especially if you think about, and if you've tuned into our previous podcast, you'd know kind of the science behind radio waves and how being inside a metal box, in this case that could be a vehicle, how that can amplify the signal of RFID. But if you're trying to scan inside of a metal box from the outside, that's not really going to work out, right? So using the metal box of this vehicle, right? And when we talk about vehicles, there's really no limitation to the type of vehicle. You could have this in a van. You could have this in any sort of service vehicle. It could be a work truck. But really the key thing is if you can get it with some sort of enclosed back, because you want to make sure that your controller, for one, has a static place that it can be located at all times. You don't want to be moving controllers around all the time. You want to set it there and let it do its job, and then essentially associate that controller with that vehicle. So that way we can basically say anything that this controller scans is now being associated with the loadout of this vehicle. The vehicle itself doesn't really matter. What we tend to see is if there's an enclosed backing, that really helps to make the scans and the reads a lot more accurate. Because if it's open air and you don't get the benefit of the amplified signal of metal kind of bouncing around, you may miss a thing in your scan. And that also has to do with how you equip your vehicles. If you were using metal shelving versus plastic shelving, that could cause a lot of interference. But if you're using RFID, you typically want to use something like plastic shelving because you're not impeding the signal from the controller that's reading all the tags. So we've got the three components. We've got the web and the mobile, making up 1 and 2. The web is where you establish your loadout profiles. It's where you assign users to vehicles. And it's also where you can schedule and dispatch work orders. Because that's a big component of the connected service vehicle as well, is on the mobile companion application, there is the ability to execute on work orders. If you have someone in dispatch who's assigning a user a particular work order, they can then go into the mobile app, see what needs to be done, and they can get directions to that location to complete the work order. So these are all things you can do on the mobile. So really, when you look at the web and the mobile, you are setting up on the web and executing on mobile. And then the last component is the vehicle itself with the controller and the tags. And so these things make up a connected service vehicle. You can't have one without the other. However, if you don't need to use the mobile work order side of things, really when it comes to the software, you can kind of pick and choose the things that are important to you versus when it comes to the technology side, what really makes a connected service vehicle is the controller and then the tagged items inside. Now, one of the added bonuses of that controller is that you can also associate a GPS antenna. And so now not only are you getting the location of the stock inside the vehicle, but you're also getting the location of the vehicle because we're associating, again, the controller with the vehicle. And as the vehicle moves around, everything is being updated to those GPS coordinates. A connected service vehicle is the vehicle itself with all of the IoT technology built in, the mobile application, and the web application. This creates your connected service vehicle. So who uses this application? I think that's the next step that we need to get to. So anybody who really operates a fleet and has valuable assets or inventory, equipment, whatever you call it, in the back of that vehicle that has value, right? Things that you want to track, things that you need to keep track of. This is really who would use the connected service vehicle because you get a handful of benefits from it. And we'll talk about that more when we get to question number 4. But this is really for anybody who operates a fleet and for anybody who operates a fleet that carries important assets and inventory or equipment. So how does it work? We've set it up. We know what it is. How does it actually work? If you've ever tuned into one of our other conversations, whether it be a podcast or a webinar about the IoT technology, how specifically our IoT technology works, I've talked about this plenty of times before, but essentially what happens is the controller itself has a connection to the internet so that it can connect to the cloud and report to the Apptricity asset management and inventory management system. As you go about your day, a technician would arrive at the job. Maybe their vehicle has already been loaded out. Maybe it hasn't been. Regardless, the first step is going to be to equip the vehicle with what it needs for the day. Now that profile could be driven by the work that's scheduled and the tools needed to do the work, or you could just establish a generic loadout profile that this vehicle should always have these types of tools, or this vehicle should always have this many cables and this many what have you. Based off the type of work, you may need a specific loadout. If not, you may just do generic loadouts. But that's really the power of, operating the system in the way that you choose to use it. The first step would be to load out the vehicle for the day. And if you have a loadout profile associated with the vehicle, as soon as you turn the vehicle on, the controller will power and it will scan, and it will take a scan of everything that's currently in that vehicle. So you'll have the list of what's expected to be there and what's actually there. And this is a main feature on the mobile application that you can look at. This is a expected value or par value and actual value. So if you realize, hey, I'm short on a few things, or I have too much of a specific item, you can really optimize the stocking of your vehicles to make sure that you're not taking too much and, leaving other items out of stock at the storehouse or warehouse. But then on the flip side, you can also ensure that you're not running out of the equipment that you need when you're out in the field. Because the worst thing that can happen is you have a call at 2:00. It's, towards the end of your day, and you get to the location and you don't have what you need. Now what you have to deal with is either going back and restocking and putting not only that work order, but maybe any other work orders that are on your schedule. You're putting those at risk and you're pushing back the day's schedule. Or you get there and you find out in the middle, and now you have to cancel that work order and then come back another day, which for those of you who spend a lot of time at home, you have people coming in and they're doing repairs, or they're coming in, they're saying, hey, we'll be here between the hours of 12 and 4. And you're basically dedicating half of a day to make sure that you're home to let these people in, or that you're home to, have them do the work that they've been contracted to come do. They give those broad windows because a lot can go wrong in the scheduling. If I don't have enough items, I have to go back and restock. And if I have to go back and do that, it can push the rest of my schedule much further down the list. So knowing what you have in your vehicle and checking against it before the day is imperative to optimizing the time spent. So step 1, we're going to load out the vehicle. Step 2, we're going to go off and do our work for the day. So now we're talking about completing work orders, doing repairs, installations, whatever it is that your business does. We're going to go out and do that. And all throughout the day, the eye controller is scanning what is inside of the vehicle. And it's telling you, here's what's currently here. So if for some reason you end up being short, maybe you upsold and you installed 2 units instead of 1, or maybe you didn't plan to use a specific item for this specific customer, but the requirements changed, right? If you're doing a repair, maybe the repair was diagnosed as one thing, but you get there and it's actually something else. You're deducting from your inventory on board unexpectedly. What the mobile app will allow you to do is see those things and see your live stock levels. So that way, if you foresee potentially not having enough to meet your demand, you can at least make those stops proactively instead of reactively. You can go restock before you run out as opposed to after you run out. So that's the main benefit of having that live visibility of your inventory. The other part of it too is that if you establish a similar solution in your warehouse using the same type of technology, well, now you know at the warehouse level how much of each item you have in stock. So now you're eliminating that scenario where I'm out driving and I don't have what I need to do my next job, and I go to warehouse 1 and they don't have it either, right? And now I'm like, well, I don't know where else to go. Do I go to warehouse 2 or 3? Or do I just tell the customer, we can't get to your work order today, we'll let you know when it's rescheduled for? All these things just contribute to a poor customer experience. And so if you bring that same level of visibility into the warehouse level, now you're preventing those types of problems as well. And so as you're going throughout your day as a technician, you're completing jobs, you're installing, whatever it is that your company's doing, you have the live visibility into what's inside the vehicle at all times. And then for those who are mainly web users, maybe your dispatch or you're just in charge of monitoring the fleet, you're also getting the GPS coordinates of your drivers and your vehicles as they move throughout the day. So if you need to call in for backup at a specific location, you can see where everybody is on the map at any given time. Or if you have an extra work order and somebody has a little extra time, you can see the person's scheduling and what they're working on and what when their next work order is, or if they have any, any future work orders scheduled. You can now live track them and say, hey, another one came in. Do you think you can fit this in before your 4 o'clock? Right. Those are the types of scenarios that we typically tend to see in the connected service vehicle world. So at the end of the day, technician brings his vehicle back. And again, we just start the process over. Maybe you're doing your restocking as soon as the technician comes back. Maybe you do it first thing in the morning. Regardless, the system is ready to accept that restocking and make sure that everything that's supposed to be in the vehicle is still there. So that's how the system works. But how does it really help? What kind of benefits does it give your business? In-transit visibility of inventory is a huge problem in the supply chain today. Not knowing how much you have of a particular item can be detrimental to your supply chain operations. Having things tagged and scanned frequently gives you that peace of mind of knowing exactly what's in the vehicle and exactly how much of it is in the vehicle. So that's one of the main benefits. The second benefit, as we said, is driver monitoring. You can see where your vehicles are. You can see where, if support is needed, where can I call in that extra driver to come see, to come help out with a particular job or a particular event that's occurring. It also gives you the ability to visualize your vehicle inventory, which a lot of times vehicles become a black hole for inventory visibility. You have your visibility in the warehouse, you have it at the manufacturing level, but as soon as it gets in a vehicle, you don't know anything about it. This is where the controller and the tags can seamlessly translate or transfer rather from the warehouse to the vehicle. If you have the solution set up in the warehouse and in the vehicle, you never lose visibility on where your items are and how much of it you have and exactly what it is. So now you're creating that seamless visibility between warehouse and vehicle. We like to say at Apptricity that vehicles should be treated as mobile warehouses. And so you should know what's in those vehicles at all times, especially if a vehicle, on average has, let's just toss out a number, $5,000 worth of equipment, and you're operating a fleet of 100 vehicles, that's $500,000 worth of important inventory that's in movement at all times. And when those things get lost or, they wander off the vehicle, you have to replace them. And if you don't know how much you're actually using, then how can you know how much to repurchase? So these are just some of the problems that get solved by outfitting your vehicles with what we call our connected service vehicle, but also, the web and the mobile software, we refer to that as field services. It's serving your vehicles in the field. And so that's really what how the software comes in to pair with the technology to create the connected service vehicle and the field services solution paired together to provide that level of visibility in the field. A lot of times you can get that level of visibility when things are static, but when things start moving, that's when things start to get complicated. And so that's really some of the benefits that come in by outfitting your vehicles with this. It's something that doesn't take a lot of time. It's a very low maintenance, low infrastructure type of setup. And once you get it rolling, it's autonomous at that point. You can report on metrics. You can do all those things from the web. And it's a solution that really can solve a lot of those types of problems. I mean, one of the biggest problems that I didn't even mention is cycle counting. Instead of relying on manual counts to see how much of an item you have, all of that's happening automatically through scans. And you can run reports, export them, send them out via email, and those reports will dictate, or they'll show, here's what I have on hand. Here's in vehicle 1, here's what's in vehicle 2. Here's what's in the warehouse. It's that fully connected solution that gives you that visibility of how much of a particular item is in a location. And that could be a warehouse, like a vehicle, anywhere you have it set up. And so that's really the beauty of this solution, is that while we would call it a connected service vehicle, you can use that same technology in other locations. And it doesn't have to be constantly moving. It can also be used in a static location, like a warehouse. You're not buying a different system for your warehouse than you are for your vehicles. You're buying the same system. And that way you're centralizing all your data into one location that can be your source of truth for your operations. And that's really what we're getting at here, is how do you optimize those operations? So the connected service vehicle is an excellent choice for vehicle visibility, in-transit visibility of inventory, management of work orders, routing directions to the location of a work order, and real-time alerting if stock levels get below a certain amount or if items get left at a job site. Those are some of the main benefits that come with a connected service vehicle solution. So that about wraps things up for today's episode. If you like today's episode, please like and subscribe. We'd love to hear from you to see if these topics are helpful for your business. If you're interested in learning more, if you want to see a demo of the solution talked about today, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us on our corporate website at www.apptricity.com. There's plenty of more resources, both written and video, where you can learn more about the solution. You can see it in action, and you can talk to some of our people to get to know a little bit more about how it can help your business. Once again, we want to thank you guys for tuning into today's episode. We've got a lot of great content coming up. We're really excited about some interviews that we've got scheduled in September. You'll likely hear more about that in the near future. We just finished up our webinar series. If you're interested in viewing those, you can go check them out on our YouTube channel. And just some exciting stuff in the content world going on here at Apptricity. So we encourage you to continue to tune in. Reach out to us if there's topics that you'd like us to cover. If there's an area of expertise or an area that you need expertise in the supply chain execution world, we're here to help. We want this to be a valuable resource for you to tune into and learn about what's possible. So if you're interested in learning more, you can email myself at cgarcia@apptricity.com. I'd be happy to reach out and chat with you about a lot of problems can be solved with the right technology solution. So again, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time.